It was a bright Saturday morning when I received the email that would turn my life upside down. I had just brewed a fresh pot of coffee, something I had been looking forward to all week, and sat down in front of my small kitchen table in my modest apartment. The kind of peace I felt in those early hours, no calls, no emails, just a moment to myself, was a rare gift in my otherwise hectic life. I took a deep sip, savoring the warmth, before my phone buzzed on the table. I picked it up and saw an email notification from a bank I didn't recognize. My heart skipped a beat as I opened it. The subject line read, "Payment overdue, immediate action required." I frowned, scanning the contents. The email stated that I owed $3,200, and if I didn't pay it off within the next 24 hours, I'd face penalties. Panic bubbled up in my chest. I didn't have any loans. I didn't owe anyone money, and I made it a habit to pay my bills as soon as I could to avoid anything like this. I double-checked the details. My full name, my address, and my social security number were all listed in the email. This was no phishing scam. This was real. I had to make sure it was a mistake, so I called the bank's customer service number. A woman answered, and I explained my situation, hoping it was all just a mix-up. Unfortunately, she confirmed my worst fear. "Yes, a loan was taken out under your name," she said, her voice polite but matter-of-fact. "It was processed and the funds were deposited into an account 3 months ago. The loan remains unpaid." I felt my stomach twist into knots. The account, I learned, was under the name of my older brother, Ryan. Ryan. The realization hit me like a ton of bricks. There had to be some mistake, I thought, but the woman continued speaking. She detailed how the loan was legally approved using my personal information, an act I had never agreed to. I hung up without saying another word. My thoughts were racing. There was no way Ryan could have done this to me. He was my brother. We had our disagreements, sure, but this was betrayal on an entirely different level. I sat frozen in my chair, my coffee now cold. A flash of memory came to me, like an old video reel starting to play in my head. The last conversation Ryan and I had before he moved away to start his new business, a dream he'd been so eager to make happen, and which I had supported, even though I knew the risks involved. "Just trust me, it's a solid investment," Ryan had said back then, his eyes sparkling with excitement. "If I can get this loan secured under your name, we'll be in the door early. We'll make millions." I had hesitated at first. It was too much money, too risky. But Ryan was persuasive. He had always been that way, with his charm and his drive. And in the end, I caved. I signed a power of attorney, just a temporary measure, so that Ryan could handle the financial transactions for a new venture he was involved in. He had promised it would be quick. No harm, no foul. Looking back, I realized how naive I had been. I had trusted him to handle things responsibly, but now that trust felt shattered. This loan wasn't just an investment. It was a lie. I immediately called him, my fingers trembling as I dialed his number. The phone rang 3 times before he answered. "Hey, what's up?" Ryan's voice was casual, like nothing had happened. But I was already feeling the anger rising in my chest. "Don't play dumb," I said, my voice tight with fury. "You took out a loan in my name. Where's the money?" There was a brief silence before Ryan responded with that familiar, nonchalant tone. "Relax, man. It's just a business thing. Nothing to worry about." "Nothing to worry about?" I repeated, my voice rising. "You've taken out a loan in my name, and I'm expected to pay it back." "Look, I'm sorry it's come to this," Ryan said, his tone suddenly defensive. "But this is a huge opportunity. Once everything settles, you won't have to worry about anything. I'll make it right." I didn't buy it. The last time he promised me that things would settle, he had lost thousands on a failed startup. And now, here we were again. I clenched my jaw, trying to keep my emotions in check. "No, Ryan. I'm done." My voice was cold, final. "You fix this yourself. There was silence on the other end of the line. Then, Ryan spoke, but his tone had changed. It was sharp now, almost angry. "Don't be like that," he said. "You're blowing this out of proportion. It's just money. It's not like it's the end of the world." But to me, it was the end of something. Something fundamental. My brother had crossed the line, and I wasn't going to let him get away with it this time. I hung up the phone and sat in stunned silence, my heart pounding in my chest. I had always been the one to clean up Ryan's messes, to bail him out of his latest failure. But this time, I wasn't going to be the one to pay. I was done being the good sibling, the one who always covered for him. I stood up from the table, my mind set. I wasn't going to let this go. Not this time. Ryan had made a huge mistake, and I wasn't going to be the one to clean it up. I was going to take action. The next few days passed in a blur of phone calls, emails, and sleepless nights. I couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal that gnawed at me. I had known Ryan for my entire life, but now everything I thought I knew about him felt like a lie. I started to piece together the fragments of our past, the moments when his ambition had overshadowed everything else. And suddenly, I saw it all clearly. This wasn't just a one-time mistake. It was a pattern. I knew I had to confront him. I couldn't let this go on any longer, no matter how much he tried to downplay the situation. But when I called Ryan again, his responses were the same. Denial, excuses, and half-hearted promises that things would work out if I just gave him some time. The more he spoke, the angrier I became. Time was not on my side. The bank was threatening to report the loan to my credit, and if it went unresolved, I could lose everything. It was as if Ryan didn't even realize the weight of the situation. Or worse, he didn't care. I was tired of waiting for him to make it right, and I knew that if I wanted this mess to end, I was going to have to do it myself. I took a deep breath and decided to reach out to the bank. I explained the full situation again, hoping that someone there could provide clarity. This time, I spoke to a manager who seemed more understanding than the first representative. She confirmed that the loan had indeed been processed under my name, but the problem wasn't just with the loan, it was with how it was applied. According to her, Ryan had submitted documents and personal information that appeared to be legitimate, and the loan had been approved without any red flags. The fact that it had been taken out without my knowledge was troubling, but there were no immediate signs of fraud, at least not yet. "You need to get in touch with your brother and get this sorted out," she advised. "If you want to avoid legal repercussions, you'll need to start taking action now. The loan must be repaid or renegotiated." Her words echoed in my mind long after I hung up the phone. I felt cornered, like there was no way out. But there was one thing I could do. I could find out exactly how Ryan had managed to pull this off. If he wasn't going to tell me the truth, I would have to dig for it myself. I began going through every document I could find, bank statements, old emails, even credit card bills. Anything that could give me a clue about how Ryan had gotten his hands on my personal information. And it didn't take long for me to uncover something chilling. There was a charge on my credit card that I didn't recognize. It was small, just a few $100s, but it was enough to make my heart race. The purchase was listed as an online service that specialized in credit reports and identity verification. Ryan had used my information before, and now he had used it again to access all the details needed to take out a loan. I felt like a fool for not noticing it sooner. Ryan had been building this scheme behind my back for months, and I had been none the wiser. But this discovery wasn't enough. I needed proof that Ryan had intentionally used my information. I needed something concrete to show the bank, to show everyone, that he was responsible for this mess. So, I started contacting people who might know something, anyone who might have been involved in the process. First, I called the credit service provider. I posed as a concerned customer, pretending to need a report for myself. After some back and forth, I managed to get the name of the person who had requested the identity verification service on my account. It was Ryan. The realization hit me like a tidal wave. Ryan had been setting this up for months, and I had no idea. He had been using my identity to secure loans, make investments, and likely get himself into more debt than he could handle, all under the guise of business ventures. He had never intended to pay it back, not unless I forced his hand. The anger that burned in me was almost overwhelming. How could he have done this? How could he have stolen my identity and ruined my financial future without a second thought? I had always supported him, always believed in his dreams. I had stood by him through every failure and every bad decision, but this was beyond anything I could forgive. That night, I sat in my apartment, surrounded by the paperwork that revealed just how deep Ryan's manipulation had gone. I knew I had to act quickly, but part of me wanted to confront him immediately. To yell, to scream, to demand that he fix what he had broken. But I couldn't do it out of anger alone. I needed to be strategic. I took a deep breath and called my lawyer. I had been putting it off for weeks, but now I realized I couldn't wait any longer. I needed legal advice on how to proceed. What were my options? Could I press charges? Could I sue him for damages? I had no idea, but I wasn't about to let him walk away from this without facing consequences. The lawyer was helpful, but she made it clear that things wouldn't be easy. Identity theft was a serious offense, and I would need to gather all the evidence I could to prove that Ryan had acted with malicious intent. This would take time, months, maybe longer, but I had no choice but to move forward. As I hung up the phone, I felt a sense of clarity. I wasn't going to let Ryan get away with this. He had crossed the line, and I wasn't going to be his victim anymore. The next time I saw him, he would know that I wasn't the naive sister he could manipulate. I was done. And I was going to make sure everyone knew the truth. The day I'd been dreading had finally arrived. I had spent the past few weeks gathering every scrap of evidence I could find, credit card statements, emails, even screenshots of the online transactions that Ryan had made in my name. I had the truth in front of me now, and there was no turning back. I couldn't keep hiding behind the illusion that Ryan was just making mistakes. He had crossed a line that couldn't be uncrossed, and it was time to confront him. I arranged to meet him at our parents' house. I knew it would be the most neutral place to have this conversation, and it would also allow me to gather strength from the memories of our childhood. Our home had always been a place of comfort, but I couldn't let it hold me back this time. Not when so much was at stake. When I arrived, Ryan was already there, sitting at the kitchen table with a mug of coffee. His usual easy smile didn't quite reach his eyes today. He must have sensed something was wrong. I could feel the tension building in my chest, but I had to do this. No more excuses. No more lies. "Hey," I said, trying to sound calm, though my voice was a little shaky. "We need to talk." Ryan looked up from his mug and raised an eyebrow. "What about?" I pulled out a folder filled with documents and slid it across the table. I could see his eyes narrow slightly, but he didn't say anything. I waited, watching his face for any signs of recognition, but his expression remained impassive. "I've been doing some digging," I began, my voice steadying with each word. "And I found something interesting. Something that involves you, and a loan you took out in my name." Ryan's eyes flickered, but his mask didn't slip. "What? I don't know what you're talking about." "Don't play dumb, Ryan," I shot back, my frustration bubbling to the surface. "I have the paperwork right here. I know you took out that loan using my personal information. I know you've been using my credit to fund whatever your latest business venture is. You can't deny it anymore." For a moment, Ryan didn't speak. His gaze flicked down to the documents on the table, and I could see the wheels turning in his head. He was trying to come up with an excuse, trying to figure out how to talk his way out of this. But I wasn't going to let him. I wasn't going to fall for the same old manipulations. "I don't know how this happened," he said slowly, his voice almost too calm. "There must be some kind of mistake. I didn't mean to." I cut him off, my patience running thin. "Save it. I know exactly what you did. I traced the steps. You used my information to apply for the loan. You used my identity to get access to funds, and now I'm stuck with the debt. You've been lying to me, Ryan." And I'm done letting you get away with it. Ryan's face flushed a deep shade of red, but he still didn't back down. You don't understand, he muttered. I was doing this for us, for the family. I was going to pay it back. I just needed a little help to get things started. I leaned forward, my eyes narrowing. Don't you dare put this on me. You took my trust and used it to line your pockets, and now you want to play the victim? This isn't about helping anyone. This is about you being too greedy to care about the consequences. The silence that followed was thick and heavy. For the first time, I saw a crack in Ryan's confidence. His shoulders slumped, and I could tell that he was starting to realize that he wasn't going to get out of this. But even then, he tried to salvage whatever dignity he had left. I didn't mean to hurt you, Mia, he said, his voice softer now. I thought I could fix it all. I thought I could make everything right, but it just got out of hand. I swear I didn't mean for you to get dragged into this. I looked at him, torn between the anger that burned in my chest and the part of me that still wanted to believe in the brother I grew up with. But the truth was clear, and no amount of remorse could erase the damage he'd caused. I don't want your apology, Ryan, I said, my voice cold. What I want is for you to fix this. You're the one who dug this hole, and now you need to help get me out of it. Ryan opened his mouth to respond, but no words came out. For a moment, he just stared at me, the weight of the situation sinking in. I could see the guilt in his eyes, but it wasn't enough. It was too late for apologies. Too late for him to pretend that this was just some unfortunate misunderstanding. I'm not going to cover for you anymore, I continued, standing up from the table. You've lied to me, you've used me, and now it's time for you to face the consequences. I've already contacted a lawyer. You're going to fix this, or I'll make sure you do. Ryan stood up too, but his movements were slow, defeated. I could see the panic in his eyes, the realization that he had pushed me too far. He opened his mouth again, but I didn't give him the chance to speak. Don't come to me with excuses, I snapped. Don't come to me at all until you've figured out how to make things right. If you're not going to fix it, I will. And you won't like the way I do it. For a brief moment, Ryan stood there in silence, his hands clenched into fists by his sides. I didn't wait for him to say anything else. I turned and walked out of the room, my heart pounding in my chest. I could hear him calling my name behind me, but I didn't stop. As I drove away from our parents' house, I felt a strange mix of emotions. Anger. Relief. Fear. But most of all, I felt a sense of power. I wasn't the helpless victim anymore. I was taking control, and Ryan would have to face the consequences of his actions, no matter how much he tried to deny it. The game had changed. And this time, I was the one holding all the cards. The next few days were a blur of phone calls, emails, and meetings with lawyers. I had made my decision. I wasn't going to let Ryan off the hook. He had taken something from me that I couldn't get back, and I wasn't about to let him slither his way out of the mess he'd created. If I was going to fix this, I needed to go all in. It wasn't just the loan. It was everything. The years of manipulation, the trust one had given him, the way he had used our family as a shield whenever things got rough for him. For too long, I had let him get away with it. But this time, it was different. I was different. I didn't even know if Ryan had started the process of rectifying the situation. I hadn't heard from him since our confrontation, and for a while, I thought maybe he would just avoid me completely. Maybe he would just pretend it never happened and hope I'd go away. But I wasn't going anywhere. The lawyer I hired was sharp, professional, no nonsense, and, most importantly, on my side. He made it clear that we had the evidence to take legal action if Ryan didn't make things right. It was a relief to finally feel like I had some control over the situation. The weight that had been on my shoulders for so long started to lift, but it wasn't enough. I needed closure. I needed Ryan to feel the gravity of his actions. 2 days later, Ryan reached out to me, but it wasn't the apology I had hoped for. Instead, it was a phone call that left me even more furious than before. Mia, his voice crackled through the receiver. I've been thinking, and I'm not sure this is the best way to handle it. You're making this worse than it needs to be. We're family, right? Don't you think we can work this out without involving lawyers?" I couldn't help but laugh bitterly. Work it out? You think you can just talk your way out of this? You've done enough damage, Ryan. You don't get to just sweep it under the rug because we're family. This isn't a family problem anymore. It's a legal one. And you're going to fix it, or I will make you. There was a long pause on the other end of the line before Ryan finally spoke again, his voice quieter. "I'm not trying to avoid responsibility. I don't know how to fix this. I don't have the money to pay it off right now, and I can't get another loan to clear it up. I messed up, Mia. I messed up big." I felt a pang of something deep inside, something that almost sounded like sympathy. Almost. For a moment, I thought maybe he was being honest, maybe he really didn't know how to handle the consequences of his actions. But then, I remembered everything he had put me through. I remembered the lies, the manipulation, and how easily he had used me as a pawn in his schemes. I couldn't let him off the hook now. "You'll figure it out," I said, my tone hardening. "You've created this mess, and now you have to clean it up. Don't expect me to come to your rescue anymore, Ryan. Not this time." Another long pause. I could hear the faint sound of his breathing, and I knew he was weighing his options. I wasn't going to make it easy for him. I wasn't going to let him sweet-talk his way out of this. "I'll try," he finally muttered, but there was no conviction in his voice. "I'll try to make it right." I ended the call without saying another word. There was nothing more to say. I had done all I could to give him a chance to fix things on his own terms. Now, it was time for him to face the music. The following weeks were tense. I stayed in touch with my lawyer, making sure that every document was in order, that we were prepared to move forward if Ryan didn't make any progress on repaying the debt. I kept my distance from him, refusing to let him manipulate me again. He tried reaching out a few more times, apologizing, promising to make things right, offering vague excuses, but I didn't give him the satisfaction of responding. Then, one afternoon, I received a letter in the mail. It was from the bank that had issued the loan in my name. I opened it with trembling hands, my heart pounding in my chest as I read the contents. The bank had confirmed that the loan had been transferred to Ryan's name, finally, and that the debt had been fully paid off. I was free. I could hardly believe it at first. After everything, it was finally over. The weight that had been hanging over me for so long was gone. I felt like I could breathe again, like the cloud that had been shadowing my every move had lifted. But as relieved as I was, a small part of me couldn't shake the feeling of betrayal. It wasn't just about the money. It was about the trust, the years of being manipulated, the feeling that my own family could turn on me when it suited them. It was only when I saw Ryan a few weeks later, at a family gathering, that I finally allowed myself to feel the full extent of everything that had happened. He approached me, his face tense, eyes darting nervously. "Mia," he started, his voice quieter than usual. "I wanted to say thank you for not going through with the legal action. I'm sorry, okay? I messed up. I don't know what else to say." I looked at him for a long moment, letting the silence hang between us. For a while, I thought about all the times I had protected him, all the times I had kept quiet and let him off the hook. But not anymore. I had learned a lot over the past few weeks, and one thing was clear: I couldn't let him keep taking advantage of me. "You're welcome," I said coolly. "But don't expect me to forget this. I'm done covering for you, Ryan. You'll have to fix your own mistakes from now on." He nodded, a look of regret flashing across his face, but he didn't argue. And for the first time in a long while, I felt like I was in control. The consequences had arrived, and Ryan would have to live with them. I had faced the truth. I had stood up for myself. And I had won. Months had passed since the ordeal with Ryan. My life had started to settle into a rhythm. It wasn't perfect, but I had regained control over my own destiny, something I hadn't felt in years. I was free from the weight of the loan, free from the suffocating pressure that Ryan had put on me, and most importantly, I was free from the constant guilt of feeling like I owed him. I had reclaimed my sense of self. But while the financial aspect of the betrayal was over, there was still something else, something deeper, that I hadn't fully addressed. The emotional toll of everything that had happened still lingered, hanging in the air like a fog I couldn't shake. I spent a lot of time reflecting on what had happened between us. I replayed the moments when I had trusted Ryan blindly, when I had bent over backward to protect him, to shield him from the consequences of his actions. I thought about the lies he had told, the way he had used my own family against me, and the constant manipulation. I had been so naive, so willing to forgive him because he was my brother. But in the end, that didn't matter. Family wasn't supposed to hurt you like that. One afternoon, I found myself staring at the photos on my bookshelf, family pictures, memories of better times. Ryan and I were in many of them, smiling, laughing, living in a world where I believed we were a united front. But now, it all seemed so hollow. Those images were reminders of a past that no longer felt real. It was like I had been living in a lie, a fantasy that I was too afraid to question until it was too late. It wasn't just about what Ryan had done. It was about my own role in it. For years, I had been the one to take care of everyone. I had been the protector, the one who kept everything together when it seemed like the world was falling apart. I had convinced myself that I had to take on the burden, that I had to fix everything. But in doing so, I had forgotten about my own needs, my own well-being. I had let myself get lost in trying to fix other people's mistakes. And now, the cost of that was clear. As time went on, I began to rebuild my relationship with my parents. They had always been caught in the middle, torn between their loyalty to their son and their desire to protect me. When everything came to light, they finally saw Ryan for who he really was, not the charming, manipulative figure he had always portrayed, but someone who had crossed the line, who had betrayed the trust of his own sister. They knew that I had done the right thing, that I had been forced to take action to protect myself, even if it meant confronting the uncomfortable truths about our family. The hardest part was still trying to figure out what I wanted from my relationship with Ryan moving forward. I wasn't sure if I could ever trust him again. The damage was done, and the emotional scars ran deep. But I wasn't interested in holding on to resentment either. I had already spent too much time being angry, too much time allowing his actions to control my emotions. It was one evening, when I was sitting alone in my living room, that I finally made my decision. Ryan had sent me a few texts over the last couple of months, apologizing again, asking if we could talk. I hadn't responded. Part of me wanted to let him back into my life, to give him a chance to prove he had changed, but another part of me knew that I couldn't go back to the way things were. I had already given him so many chances before, and each time, he had let me down. I grabbed my phone and typed out a response. Ryan, I've thought a lot about everything, and I think it's time we have an honest conversation. But I need you to understand that things can never go back to the way they were. I can't just pretend that nothing happened. We have to be real about the damage that's been done, and we both need to take responsibility for our actions. I'm willing to talk, but only if we can approach it with the understanding that things are different now. I've changed, and so has everything else. I stared at the message for a moment, my finger hovering over the send button. It felt like a weight lifting off my chest. The decision was made. There was no turning back. I hit send. It was the first step toward healing. Not just for me, but for him too. If we were ever going to move forward, whether as siblings or as two individuals who had once shared a family, we needed to face the truth. The ugly truth. The one I had been avoiding for so long. But now, I wasn't afraid to face it. A few days later, Ryan responded. It was a short message, but it said enough. I understand. I'm sorry, Mia. I know I hurt you, and I don't expect things to be the same. But I want to try. Please, let's talk. I didn't reply immediately. I needed time to process. Part of me still didn't trust him, but another part of me knew that I had to at least hear him out. It wasn't about forgiveness, it was about closure. about letting go of the past so that I could fully embrace the future. We met at a coffee shop a week later. Ryan looked different. He seemed more vulnerable, more human. It was strange to see him like that, broken, almost, as though the weight of everything had finally caught up with him. It was clear that he wasn't the same person I had once known. "Mia, I can't change what I did," he started, his voice shaky. "But I can tell you that I'm sorry. I don't expect you to forgive me. I don't deserve it. But I want you to know that I'm trying to be a better person. I know I have a long way to go, but I'm trying." I didn't say anything right away. I just looked at him. The anger that I had felt for so long had started to fade, replaced by something else, something I couldn't quite put into words. Part of me still wanted to scream at him, to remind him of everything he had done. But another part of me understood. I had been there once, too. I had made mistakes, I had hurt people, and I had needed to own up to my actions. "I'm not saying I can forgive you, Ryan," I said finally, my voice steady but firm. "But I'm not going to keep carrying this anger anymore. It's too heavy for me. I'm moving forward. And I need you to do the same." He nodded slowly, as if he understood that the road to redemption wasn't going to be easy. But it was a start. I left that meeting feeling lighter than I had in months. Not because everything was fixed, but because I had taken the final step toward reclaiming my peace. I had stood up for myself, I had faced the truth, and now I was finally free to live my life on my own terms. As I walked away from the coffee shop, I felt the weight of the past lifting off my shoulders. The journey wasn't over, but it had led me to a place of strength I never knew I had. And that was enough.